Actress Dervla Kirwan was born and brought up in Dublin. In the 1990s, she became a household name after starring in the hit BBC drama series Ballykissangel.
Dervla, Dervla over here in your left, please.
I think I got the acting bug very early on. I'm not a great writer. I'm not a painter. I can't really sing. So acting for me is that great outlet. And I enjoy it enormously. I guess I just like the escape. It's a great escape.
At the age of 17, Dervla left Ireland and moved to England and has lived there ever since.
My Irish identity is important because it's absolutely a part of who I am. My family has always been very interested in Irish politics. When I was growing up, that political heritage was so strong and such a force in my family that you either go with it or you do what I do and you move away. It's nothing that I've ever spoken about in any interview because I don't want that prejudice to infiltrate who I am. Now, I really want to explore this part of my family and not run away from it. But I am really apprehensive. This is like jumping out of an airplane and not quite knowing if your parachute works.
Dervla has returned from England to Dublin, her hometown.
I do know that on my mother's side, I'm related to a very famous person, Michael Collins.
Michael Collins led the fight for Irish independence from Britain in the early 1920s and is one of the most revered figures in Irish history.
I remember the first time my mother said, oh yes, we're related to Michael Collins. And I remember going into school the next day, as you do when you're a kid, you know. And I said, oh yes, in history class, I'm related to Michael Collins. And the teacher kind of dropped her pencil and said, really? And I said, yeah. And she said, how? And I said, I don't know. When I was growing up, there were never any conversations about the past, because if you don't ask the questions, you never get the answers.
Dervla's going back home to visit her parents, Peter and Maureen Kirwan, to find out more about the Collins connection.
I would like to clarify, how are we related? And to what degree is the sort of the strength, the link through blood and family? Hey. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good, come on in.
Hold on.
So I want to start about the Collins connection, and because I know so little about it, but I'm just very interested.
I'm his grandniece.
Okay.
So you're his great-grandniece.
Okay.
So you're quite a connection, pretty close, you know, third generation. He played a huge role in Irish independence. He was a towering figure.
A brilliant man, really.
Oh, absolutely. A bit of a genius, really. Yeah. Not a bit of a genius, really.
Michael Collins was born into a proudly nationalist family in County Cork in 1890. He became one of the leading figures in the Republican Sinn Féin party and the mastermind behind the newly formed Irish Republican Army, the IRA. A charismatic politician and brilliant military strategist, he was determined to end British rule in Ireland and establish an Irish Republic. Michael Collins was Dervla's great-great-uncle. His nephew was Finian Collins O'Driscoll, Dervla's maternal grandfather.
Maybe a little bit closer generationally, it'd be nice to know about your father, my grandfather. I don't really know what my grandfather's name was.
Finian.
Finian.
My mother used to call him Feeny.
Feeny. Okay.
Feeny.
And
Finian.
obviously I never met him. So what was he like? Because I know
Yeah.
so little about him, you know?
Yes, well, he grew up in Cork. He joined the army when he was very young, and he became an officer in the army, and he also studied law, but he never practiced.
Did he know Collins as a boy?
He
You
did.
know?
My grandmother was teaching school in Clonakilty, and Michael Collins stayed in my grandmother's house for at least a year, maybe 2 years. So my father did know him.
And would have idolised this young man in his prime.
Absolutely. Worshipped him, really.
To the best of your knowledge, what was Grandad doing around the time of
Michael
the
Collins'
Civil
death,
War,
or the...
because he would have been what?
He would have been in the IRA.
Yeah.
He was in the IRA.
Well, given that my grandfather was Michael Collins' nephew, it isn't really that much of a surprise that he would have been involved in the IRA at that time. But what is surprising is that there's a huge chunk, a space, that I need to find out, because he was so young, I need to find out what he was up to at that time.
To research her grandfather Finian's IRA activities and how his uncle Michael Collins shaped his early life, Dervla is visiting Cochel Brewer Barracks in Dublin.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just want to get to the military archives.
Military Archives.
Yeah.
See the red building on your left?
Yeah.
All the way up to the end of that red building, take a left turn, you can't miss it.
Brilliant. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I have to confess, my knowledge of this period that my grandfather was living through is very erratic. And I really want to explore what he was experiencing, living in the shadow of Collins, and what was expected of him at that time.
Dervla has called up Finian's army pension file, which details his IRA activities. Pension files are not normally available to the public, but the Military Archives has made an exception in Dervla's case.
Okay. Oh, we've got photographs. Oh, excellent. I don't know what this is. It must be very gentle. Oh, and there he is. Commandant Finian J. O'Driscoll. He was 5'8". His hair was black. His eyes were grey. He had a very strong nose. We got a date and place of birth being December the 16th, 1903 at Clonakilty in Cork. And previous service, if any, we've got 3 years pre-truce service in the IRA. I get very nervous when I see the words IRA written here because obviously the IRA have a terrible connotation for me. So I want to clarify that this IRA that we're talking about here is not the IRA that people would have experienced since, you know, the late 60s and 70s. I feel very uncomfortable about that.
The original IRA had its roots in the Irish volunteer movement, which was founded in 1913. The IRA was a Republican military organisation dedicated to ending British rule in Ireland by force. When Finian joined the IRA, his uncle Michael Collins was head of intelligence and had moulded the organisation into a highly effective guerrilla army that attracted thousands of young men across Ireland. To help understand the context of her grandfather Finian's involvement, Dervla is looking at an account of his IRA activities in Cork.
Sir, I joined the IRA on the 20th of November 1920. On the 2nd to the 3rd of July 1921, I was on signal duty on a summit near Lissavard, Rosscarbery. On that occasion, at about 3 a.m., Major Percival of the Essex Regiment came that way with a very large force. Though we were practically surrounded by his forces, we succeeded in signalling with tar torches. In the immediate neighbourhood, 7 members of the IRA were located, but for our action, they would have been captured that night and possibly shot. This is a huge revelation for me, because clearly he was much more involved than I really understood. He was a very young man. You know, when you think of young boys making these life and death decisions, it's quite astonishing, really, isn't it? I think to make sense of all of this, I personally would love to go and visit these areas that have been mentioned here. So I think you should go to Cork.
In 1920, Ireland was still part of the United Kingdom. The town of Clonakilty in West Cork, where both Finian and his uncle Michael Collins grew up, was a hotbed of IRA activity.
I'd like to try and figure out what the pressures were that they were under. I'm really interested about finding out about Finney, because what was he, 17, if that. That's crazy.
Dervla is meeting historian Dr. Gabriel Doherty to find out more about her grandfather Finian and his uncle Michael Collins.
Take a seat.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've just had the great fortune of going to the Cathal Brugha barracks. There's a sentence here. It says here, I joined the IRA on the 20th of November 1920 and was attached to the Kilcranmore Company, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Cork Brigade. So I just wanted to know, and there's so many questions about Finney, you know. I want